well, I'll just put a highlight of some things I want you to just keep scratching on as we go. Remember, one of my things isn't necessarily to change your mind, etc., but it's to things to just keep thinking about. Keep thinking about. Maybe you might call them main points or something like that. But the first one is just remember as you go through and you're building your family and you're teaching your kids values and character and all of these things, putting a system of discipline place in their life, some things to remember. And one, of course, is always going to be that the children are not yours. They're gifts from the Lord on loan to you, and He places them in your home for you to do the job of the training. And that should have a big impact on how you go about and what you do in training of your children. And number two, we said we went full circle. We came back to the old bracelet. What would Jesus do? When you come to the answer of, well, what are we going to teach them about this particular subject? The answer should be, well, what would Jesus do? And where do we get the answer? It would be right here. It would be right here. We go back and we dig and get the answer there. The ambassador type parents, where Jesus had put these kids on the earth to become ambassadors for Him. Well, then what does Jesus want built into their life so He could become ambassadors? And we don't want to take the ownership approach where we say, well, they're ours, and we're going to design their life. We're going to put it together like that. And then 3, 4, 5 is the importance of winning the battle of no. Now, down the line, we're going to say, and it's in here too, that character is going to outweigh behavior. But we kind of have to win that behavior battle first so we can build the character. Because the behavior battle is going to be built around obedience. Now, we're going to get the character out of here. But to build a godly character, they've got to become what? Obedient to it. Like you and I do in our Christian life. We have to become obedient to this to get the character. Now, you may still end up with a little character in your character. Right? A little character in your character. I had 35 years experience in education, and I was both in public schools and Christian schools. And sometimes I would have a teacher say, why is that kid still in our school? Because I had a little philosophy that if everybody was a goody two-shoes in a school, that school was pretty dull. I had to have a few characters. You know, I had to have a few kids that would push the envelope a little bit. Now, not too many, obviously, but, you know, a character with a character. We still laugh about one school, and this kid was beyond a character, but he graduated, and he married one of the nicest girls in the school. And everybody was like, oh my word, you know. It's not, would you give it 2 or 3 months? Would you give it 2 or 3 hours? And this was like 40 years ago, and these kids have one of the nicest families, and they are still at it, going strong, you know, like, he's still a character, too. So, you may get a little character in your character. Stop pointing at your wife. I saw that. I saw that, Barry. You may get a little character in your character, and it's right there. Yes, right there. So, you know, but you have to win that battle of the no first to build in that obedience factor, because it's going to become necessary in that character training that way. And so that's why, in the end, character may outweigh the behavior, but you've got to have the behavior factor there. And so some of these others there, we talked about the importance of teaching your child to sit still in services. The ultimate goal is that they'd learn to be a listener of the gospel, with the end goal being we want them to respond sometime to the gospel. And if all they ever know is that church is a place to play, you're delaying the process. And so teach them. It's difficult, yeah. And it torques me. I hope I don't get in trouble. It torques me that old people take over the back rows of the church, because they really ought to be reserved for families who are working on the training of their children. And if you want help, fine. I'll go pull out the chairs from underneath the old people and get them out of there. Right? Well, that ought to get me in trouble, right? Right there. But I sincerely, if you want to train your family and you need the back rows, you know, I told you last week some stories about us, and we did. We grabbed the back rows because you're a little disruptive at times when you're training your children to sit in church. That's just part of it. And we ought to help our young families that way. And I would help you if you need some that way. So there are some things on that second page, and we'll even talk about one or two of them again today. So that's what that is. What we're going to do today is touch on several small things that way. We had a sheet, we've referred to it once or twice, and I want to refer to it once again today, and it's that first word sheet. If you still have it, you don't have to, because I got some of the things on number 4 there today on the first word sheet. I want you to take your Bible, go to a familiar verse. In Ephesians chapter 4, and not too far down the line here today. I know that some of you may feel after being here for a while, you'll say, Larry, we're jumping into this and we're behind, you know. We don't have brand new babies in our home, or 1 or 2 years old, and we may have up to and through teenagers in our home, and we feel like we're behind on this. Where do we go? And I want to touch on that today in just a little bit. And some of it may be introduced in this little number 4 here, where we talk about first words. Now, we have talked about that word no. Well, we're a little bit beyond that today. When we go in Ephesians 4:29, I think you know what that is because we've used it. We even used it in the marriage class. In Ephesians 4:29, it says, let no corrupt communication or let no corrupt talk come out of your mouth, but only such as is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear it. Now, as soon as you get more than one child in your home, you understand that in their talking to each other, that the communication is not always that which builds up and edifies each other. You realize that right away. There is a problem in that. And you realize also that if you're trying to develop your character, what they're saying to each other is not acceptable. And if you believe this verse, it is really not acceptable, it is not biblical, and it is not Christian. My high school football coach had parents who were deaf mutes. They were deaf mutes. They were a fantastic Christian family. They were unbelievable athletic families. One of the grandsons was a quarterback for the University of Michigan for several years and went on to be a quarterback for the Chicago Bears for several years. But everyone in that family could sign. And my football coach had 5 little rugrats, all of whom could sign. And his wife said, of course, Dad was gone teaching and coaching all day, and the wife was home with those 5 kids, said anytime I could hear my kids, I didn't worry about them all. But when I could not hear my kids, I better get there right now. Because what was being said was not. And so you get these situations in a hurry where siblings and sibling rivalries come out and words come out. And one of the things you need to do is attack that kind of speech. And you need to do it based upon this verse because God tells us, all of us, I mean, it needs to be in our lives first. It's just like the old Deuteronomy 6 passage where it says, teach your children, they need to hear about God's ways day and night, etc., etc. But if you look at that passage, it says it needs to be in the father's heart first. Okay, it needs to be in the adult heart first, that way. But this needs to be in your home if you have children. Now, if you've got little ones that are big enough to, this is what I would do seriously if it's a problem at home. With little ones is challenge them to be involved, get some construction paper and make signs. You could either make a sign of this verse or you could paraphrase it. Ephesians 529, you could say only kind words or bad words, or et cetera, et cetera. But I can tell you that you need to take certain words and they ought to be jumped on. Those words ought to be anathema. They ought to never be heard in your home, obviously from you, but certainly never from your children, like the word shut up. Shut up ought to be a word that is never, ever uttered in your home. You to them to each other. If you hear that, you ought to jump on that like fleas on a dog. Do not let your children ever say to each other, you're a fool. You're stupid. Hi, you guys. Good to see you. There are key words that, any word that you look at violates that scripture ought to be anathema in your home. God says that is corrupting communication. People look at that and say, oh yeah, that's four-letter dirty words. It's way beyond that. These are words which are derogatory words that tear down each other's relationship. Do not allow those words in your home. And you may have some others. I just throw those out. Shut up. You're a fool. Now, if you want to talk about the word fool, go to Proverbs and do a study on the word fool. Anger is the tool of the fool. You ought to write that one down. You ought to write that one down as a parent when you go to correct your child. Anger is the tool of the fool. Okay? And so you ought to attack this, and you ought to involve your children if they're old enough. You ought to put up some signs around the home, something to do with Ephesians 4:29. No, if they don't understand corrupting communication or corrupting words, no bad words, and let them know that that's a bad word. We don't use that word in this home. We don't tell anybody to shut up. We don't call anybody a fool. We don't say anybody's stupid. And I don't know, I may be past my prime on this word. We don't let anybody, especially a teenager, say, whatever. Whatever. They're blowing you off. We don't say whatever. We need to go back to Alabama and say, yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, sir. Now, if we want to put in some build-up words, we might put up some words like please and thank you. Now, you got a brain. You don't need me to tell you what good words and bad words are, but you need to do something. You need to go home and you need to examine this. And if you got words that are not acceptable towards building a better relationship with your kids, get rid of them.
The kids?
Grow in. What?
The kids. Get rid of them. Get rid of them.
No, we're not getting rid of the precious kids. Unless it's you and you come in late again. My man Tucker. Grow a backbone. You are the parent. Don't allow that. Don't allow that, okay? And put in some good words. Put in a please. Put in a thank you. You say that's old school. Well, hooray for old school. It's called kindness. It's called having some manners. Is there anything wrong with that? Is there something wrong? Is there anything right with it? Yeah. Not a bad deal. It's not a bad deal. Okay? We could even maybe help you a little bit with some of your directives. Maybe you could change your directives a little bit and say, we wanted to take the word okay off the end of our directives. We don't want to put okay on the end of our directives. Pick up your toys okay, because we said that takes a directive and turns it into an option. And the child will always interpret it as an option. I got a choice, so if I got a choice, no. I decide, no, I don't want to pick up the toys. you've got to build the communication, and you're talking to a child, and so they're going to understand as a child. They're going to think like a child. They're going to think like you. And so you tell them to do something. 3 little words that will help you to begin to build your communication with the child is to say, I want you to da 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 da. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Oh, yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. And you could do one step beyond that. What would that be?
Tell me what I said.
Amanda said the girls. We won't go there. Tell me back what I just said. Now that's not powerful. That's not deep, is it? But it'll help you, parents, if you say, do you understand? I want you to take these and put them away, or I want you to do this. Do you understand? Oh, no. And if it was the other way, I'd say, no, I don't understand.
Maybe tomorrow.
Maybe tomorrow. When are you going to do it? Tomorrow. Inside jokes, okay? Now, 15:1. You should know this by heart. You should know Ephesians 4:29 by heart. Proverbs 51. I told you today is very, very simple. Proverbs 15:1. Proverbs 51 is an old one, but this is a good parent verse. The soft answer turns away wrath. That's what I was hinting to when I said, be careful of your anger, because little kids misbehaving will irritate you. They'll tick you off, etc., etc. Remember one of the early notes I gave you, and I said count to 10, and in parenthesis it said what?
By tenths.
No? By what?
By tenths.
By tenths. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, maybe even by hundredths. 1/100, 2/100. The purpose of that is to settle you down. You and I flying off in anger at our children does not accomplish anything positive. It exasperates the child, it escalates the situation, and it violates Scripture, because Scripture says a strong, 15:1 says harsh words stir up anger. Harsh words stir up anger. A soft answer turns away wrath. You're already in an escalated situation. The child is in difficulty because they made a mistake, they violated, they're in fear of a consequence, you're upset with them, etc., etc. Why can't you just calm the words down, calm the rhetoric down? You don't have to change it. You can still say it firmly, but you can lower the decibel letter. You can still say it with a glint in your eye and a set jaw even. But tone down the rhetoric that way. You maybe parents need to make a little sign that says Proverbs 15:1. The kids could have Ephesians 4:29, and mom and dad could have 15:1 that way. So I just wanted to add that onto that sheet about first words, because we were talking mostly about the word no and etc. Well, that's what that little one. We want to get the little child, and we're into 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old, and then they get to fussing with each other, and we have all these very unacceptable terms flying to each other, which are wrong. Yet we need to get out of our homes, out of our families. Now, let's talk about number 5 for a few minutes: expectations, accountability, and consequences. Expectations, accountability, consequences. Children are extremely capable. They're capable probably of much more than we would think. They really are capable of much. You can put a lot of expectations on children. You can figure out by age group what they can do, but whatever you figure out for expectations, you are going to have to explain and instruct, okay? You're going to have to explain and instruct. You can't tell them something they've never done before to go do it and expect it to be done with any degree of success. That's just not going to happen. They've never done it, and they're a child. It will be poorly done. You'll be exasperated, but you haven't taught them how to do it. That's your fault. You have to train them to do it. You have to communicate it. And I know that, it's easier to do it yourself. And it'll get done right. That's true. But your job is to train your children. God has placed them in your home, and that's your job. That's a job of importance, you know? That's a job of importance for you. And so that excuse becomes flimsy, that easier to do myself. You start doing something in the kitchen, end result of which is cookies or something, raises a lot of curiosity, and somebody wants to help. Now that's all you want is a 4-year-old in the flour. Good Lord, your whole kitchen turns white. But there comes a time when that's a good idea to let them help that way. And yeah, it's going to be a mess and everything else. But expectations are there. But if you set expectations within their capability, something they can do, they can do it and they will learn to do it. But you will have to train them. You'll have to communicate into that. But if they're going to learn it, not only do you have to communicate and train into it, you will have to bring them to accountability. This will take place in the arena of household chores that you teach them and expect them to do. Accountability. What's the old saying? Anything you expect. Oh no, I'm not that old. Anything you expect, you must. Thank you. Inspect. Anything you. I didn't know you were that old. Anything.
Your mom.
Your mom, yes, your mom. Anything you expect, you must inspect. If you're teaching your child, if it's so in your heart that your child must keep a clean bedroom, a neat bedroom, or must make their bed, keep things picked up, it's not going to happen well unless you inspect it and give a pronouncement that is acceptable, that is not inspectable, okay? So, you know, in your training what the expectations are, you'll have to go back and you will have to inspect it. There has to be accountability. They have to be brought to accountability. What the world is wrong with our whole society? Everybody does what they want to because nobody is brought to accountability. Accountability. Our whole country, if everybody was brought to accountability within their homes, their families, their jobs, would that not make a huge difference in our world as we know it, in our country? Accountability. Then somebody says, no, this is not done right. Does not? Gentlemen here in my second row, do you not run into a lot of accountability, Barry, JT? Ooh, your whole life in the military is accountability. Same back there. Yeah, I got 3 of you, at least 4. Man, you guys in the military, it's all accountability. There's none in police work, is there, David? No accountability there. No, accountability is a big. Well, with your children and training your children, there's going to have to be accountability. And then these things not going well, there are consequences. There are consequences. There are consequences. Now, the challenge in consequences is what you decide the consequences are. If there's a pronouncement of what the consequences will be, you better use your little 2 marbles up on top, because if you put it out as a pronouncement, you're going to have to follow through because it's your word. If you don't follow through with your word, then you have a parent have a problem because you have either lied or your word's no good. You cannot, with your children, afford to not have your word be truthful. You cannot afford to not. Your word has to be golden. It has to be golden. It has to be ironclad and firm. It just has to be. So in part of our training, we have expectations, we have accountability, we have consequences. Well, that's pretty good if I start with a 6-month-old, gradually go to a 2, 3, 4-year-old, but what if now I'm dealing with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or teenagers? And I'm just late getting into this and I see that I've already made some mistakes. What do I do? What do I do? If I've got the problem of we're out of line, we got wrong speech in our home, we don't have obedience, we don't have respect, what the world am I going to do? What am I going to do? And that's fair because I can't go over it. I can't use the methods I used at 2 years old. I can't do that to a teenager. I can't let it go because if I let it go the way it's going, it's just going to end pretty disastrous for that poor child. And I'm foxed. Any of you know who Tony Evans is?
Yes.
Tony Evans? I believe Tony Evans, he grew up in the Chicago area. I think he grew up in the Chicago area. And is that right? Thank you. Tony Evans had a brother who was a wrestler, and he was pretty good. And one year, Tony Evans' brother won a state championship. And in the state of Illinois, that is pretty high because you got about 750 to 800 high schools in Illinois. And we are not talking Pine Bluff size high schools. Okay. And his brother, as a senior, I think, in high school, won a state championship in wrestling. And Tony says, for some reason, it went right straight to his head. Said he should have known better in the home we lived in because Dad was the law. And he said, we all had chores, and there was no question in the chores and everything else, but he said he come home one night and he didn't have his chores done or something. He said, Dad hollered upstairs and said, hey, your chores aren't done, you better get with it. And he said, for some insane reason, my brother hollered down the stairs, I'm 18, and I ain't gonna do those chores anymore. I'm 18 and I don't have to. His dad went up the stairs and he said, I'll tell you, son, right now, get out of my house, now. Just a few minutes later, his son comes down, starts out the door, and he said, wait a minute. This is a dead of winter. This is March. It's cold in Chicago. You've been there? Very cold in Chicago. He said, wait a minute. Take off your coat. He took off his coat. He said, give it to me. I bought that coat. That's mine. Get out. Slammed the door and out he went. About 4 or 5 hours there was this knock on the door. He said, Dad, about those chores? Now, I don't know if that's how you handle a teenager that is behind training or not. Several years ago, I had a grandson who was probably about 7 or 8. And he decided he didn't want to do what our daughter told him he needed to do. And he said, I am going to run away. And she said, okay, Brandon. Our grandson's name is Brandon. Okay, come on, upstairs. And she goes upstairs and she gets in the closet. She gets out a suitcase and she said, go get 2 pair of Levi's, put them in there, and said, now get your sweatshirts, gonna be cold. Get that blanket and put it in there. And he's starting to look like this, you know. Said, now go to your bank and get some money. Said, you'll probably have to eat at McDonald's. And pretty soon he's just standing there like this. And she's telling him to get a few more things, and pretty soon it's, I don't want to run away. Now, somewhere in there, I don't know. What are you going to do? And, you know, you're all like, oh, he's going to give us the answer. Oh boy, do I wish I had the answer to give you. What are you going to do if you're behind? Now, I've got a Chelsea 30. 29. Got a 29-year-old granddaughter who's a true millennial living at home. And she pays rent. And does her own laundry, gets her own food. And totally on her own financially. Not one penny from the parent. And so that's the way they handle that one. So somewhere you are behind, you're behind on this. What do you do?